The novel I'm going to be doing my director's cut on is Crime and Punishment by Theodore Dostoevsky, and the movie I'm going to be using is also called Crime and Punishment, but was made in 1970 and was directed by Lev Kulizyanov. The story begins with Rodion Romanovich Raskolnikov, the protagonist who is described as tall and handsome, but also as a pale and sick man. He lives in 19th century St. Petersburg, Russia, and is in poverty like the most of his town. Raskolnikov has been contemplating the murder of his town pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, as she has been ripping off the other villagers even though she is the wealthiest person in town. This is, however, his superficial reason for doing so, as in reality he is conflicted with this notion that he is an extraordinary man, and so he believes that he can break the law in order to do good. He constantly contemplates the murder and puts a lot of mental and psychological stress on himself. One day he goes to a tavern, where he overhears a student talking about how society would be better off if the old pawnbroker were dead. Later in the streets, Raskolnikov hears that the pawnbroker will be alone in her apartment the next evening as her sister Elizaveta is going to be out. He then makes plans to follow through with his idea to kill her once and for all so that he can take all of her money and give it back to the villagers. This scene begins just as Raskolnikov arrives at Alyona's apartment to murder her.
Здравствуй, Алена Ивановна. Я вам весь принес. Да ваша лошадь, пойдемте сюда, к свету.
Да что вы, кто вы такой?
Помилуйте, знакомый ваш Раскольников. Вот, заклад принес. Я обещался на медне. Что вы так смотрите, будто не верите? Будто не узнали. Я пойду к другим. Ну?
Че ты, батюшка, так вдруг сразу? Что такое?
Северная папиросница, я вам говорил в прошлый раз.
Че ты, батюшка, побледнел так? Испугался чего-нибудь?
Лихорадка. Поневоле станешь бледным, коли есть нечего.
Что такое?
В общем, серебряная папиросница. Посмотрите.
И не серебряный вроде. Ишь, навертел. Да что это он тут такой навертел?
The film was directed in St. Petersburg itself and thus gives a true-to-life feel to it and immediately resonates with the setting that is portrayed in the book. Koluzanov is able to replicate the dark and poverty-stricken areas of 19th century Russia perfectly and use it to highlight the despair and depression that overtook the village and Raskolnikov in the story. In this scene, the difference between the rest of the town and Alyona's apartment is clearly visible as her apartment is lavished in beautiful wallpaper. This change from the book is effectively done by the director, as the wallpaper subtly hints at her being from a higher class than Raskolnikov. The outside of her apartment is dark and gives off a very uncleanly look to it, which helps show the divide between the classes. Throughout the rest of the movie, the setting helps reflect Raskolnikov's state of mind as well. An example of this would be when the navel was calm and still, which represented Raskolnikov being at peace. The setting in this movie creates a clear visual image of the divide between the poor and the rich through its subtle details, and effectively translates both the setting and tones described in the book. The soundtrack translates both the mood and the tone of the book effectively, and enhances the character development as well. Throughout the movie, the director uses classic sound effects and uses them in short bursts to recreate the excitement, suspense, and mystery that was intended in the book. In this scene, the soundtrack is eerie and dark, and this helps create an atmosphere of suspense. The director chooses to do this because the focus of the novel is on the psychological warfare that goes on inside Raskolnikov's mind. By playing these creaky and disturbing sounds, it shows how nervous and conflicted Raskolnikov is, and this effectively portrays how Raskolnikov was described in the book. These sounds cannot be heard when reading the book, but after watching the movie, these sounds play in your head anytime you reread this scene. The soundtrack in the rest of the movie never detracts from the film and continues to help build the suspense and tension that is alluded to by the book. Gregory Taratorkin, who plays Raskolnikov, and Victoria Fyodorova, who plays Alyona, are perfect casts for their respective roles, and their wardrobe choice only adds to this. Raskolnikov is described as a tall, pale, and sickly man, and Gregory matches this description exactly. He is tall and has this almost emotionless and pale look on his face when he commits the murder. Although this emotionless look is not described in the book, it is an effective choice made by Gregory, as it shows how mentally unstable Raskolnikov was. Gregory is dressed in these sort of rags that cover his entire body, and they create this sense of mystery and depression through their dark colors. This effectively translates Raskolnikov's complex state of mind, as he was an unpredictable and mysterious person in the book. There was always this sense of depression and darkness due to all the misfortunes and poverty in his life. Alyona is also expertly played by Victoria, as she is able to accurately portray herself as this wealthy woman through her exquisite dress, and also appear as the elderly woman described in the book. All the other wardrobes and props are also done well in this movie, as they are all things that would be used in that time period, such as wooden wash basins or the wooden axe used for the murder. Overall, the casting, props, and wardrobe were carefully chosen, and this helped give the movie a really lifelike feeling to it while still being very relatable to the book. The director uses a variety of shots in order to highlight different aspects of characters and the book in general. Deep and complicated contrasts, as well as clear-cut frame shots, are used in order to focus on isolated visual symbols like Raskolnikov's face or Alyona's back. This is very effective as it puts emphasis on certain aspects of the character and sends a message without saying any words. For example, the focus shots on Raskolnikov's and Lizaveta's face just before he kills her effectively shows both Raskolnikov's conflicted emotions and Lizaveta's acceptance of her demise. One key difference between the movie and the book is that the book describes the scenery and background in color, while the film is in black and white. By filming in black and white, the film draws immediate attention from the viewing audience, as the audience is not distracted by the scenery or background. They are forced to focus on the characters and their development, which helps effectively translate the book. These forced but expertly chosen transitions and close-ups effectively integrate the complex emotions and feelings that were described in the book. This scene connects to both the psychoanalytical theory and Marxist theory. It connects to the psychoanalytical theory as Raskolnikov is driven by his extraordinary man complex, or Superman complex, to kill Alyona. He has the need to prove to himself that he is above all others and can do what nobody else can. However, through his sudden outbursts of guilt, Throughout the scene, it shows that he is conflicted with himself. Through this scene, it can be seen that Raskolnikov's conscience is making him feel guilty about committing the murders and listening to his Superman complex. This scene also relates to the Marxist theory, as Alyona is a symbol of the power and wealth that the bourgeoisie have over the proletariats like Raskolnikov. By killing her and redistributing her wealth, Raskolnikov is essentially overthrowing her, the bourgeoisie, and starting a revolution, thus disrupting the existing power structure. The intended audiences for this film are people who have read the book and want to see a film adaptation of it, or simply mature Russian audiences who enjoy a psychological drama. This film caters to them as it effectively translates the overall plot, explicit emotions, and hidden themes and motifs into one well-crafted film.